Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Matt Breed, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week, we're going over UFC Vegas 31, headlined by Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moises. Can't wait to break down this card for you guys. Very interesting in the fact that we don't really have much name value on the card, but there should definitely be some bangers on the card, and obviously some prime betting opportunities that we should be able to take advantage of. And I got three very solid guys to help me break down this card. No, I've had everybody blasting me up all week. Like, you got James on again. You got James on again. No, I don't have James on, but I do have some very sharp people that are, definitely know what the hell they're talking about and have a very good wealth of knowledge to share with you guys, especially for the card coming up here. All right, without further ado, let me just start bringing in these guys one by one. And first and foremost, I want to bring in one of the guys that I'm probably closest with in this MMA community. We got my guy Rockstar Z. What's going on, Z?
Not too much. Sorry to disappoint. I'm not a veteran UFC fighter and coach of, MMA talent, but I gamble on fights. So happy to come on here and talk to you, bud.
Absolutely, brother. I try to mix it up as much as possible, but I told you when I first started this show, you were scheduled to be on episode numero uno, and you're like, I don't really feel it anymore. But I'm glad that you actually got your handicapping cap back on. Not only do you have your handicapping cap back on, but you're doing LFA, you're doing Bellator, you're doing all of this shit. So you went balls deep, not just easing yourself in. You went all the way back in, dude.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this night pans out long run, but I think there's a lot of value to be had on the lower level MMA. You can get a lot of quick finishes, you can get a lot of mismatches. So been trying to put in the work on this lower level and take advantage.
Absolutely. So if you guys are looking for LFA stuff, my guy Z has you covered for that as well. All right, let's bring in another good buddy of mine. I've done a live stream with him before for one of our past pay-per-views that we've done, and I've been begging him to come on this show as well. Thankfully, he's been able to do it for us this weekend. We got my guy Warrior Bet MMA. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, guys? How you doing today?
Good, man. I've been hounding you to come on this fucking show, and you're like, you know what? All right, I'll do it this week. Just like Z, both you guys. You guys are like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait till both of you guys come on, and it's only fitting, right? You guys have the same fucking logo pretty much as well, and you guys still haven't changed it either. You guys got to go down and like make a legitimate bet in terms of who has to change their fucking logo.
When the right fight arises, we will make an avatar bet. You heard it here first.
Perfect. Like, keep the same avatar, just change the fucking color. That's it. Jesus.
No, we're changing the whole thing.
All right.
First come, first.
Lastly, we're gonna bring on my guy Narco Cop here a little bit later that I've actually been known or found this guy. But Narco Cop is definitely a very sharp dude who stays very, very busy inside the MMA streams, showing a lot of support to us, and obviously making his own bets as well too. What's going on, brother?
What's up, Black? Thanks for having me. What's up, Z Warrior? Glad to be here.
For sure, brother. I'm really looking forward to having this cast on because everybody has a different thing that they really like to attack, especially when it comes to MMA betting. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what kind of points of views and angles that we can break down all of these upcoming fights for. So let's not waste any more time. Let's just fucking get right into it. First and foremost, we got a heavyweight slop fest kicking off this card. We got Rodrigo Nascimento going up against Alan Baudot. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 315, I believe it is. There it is. Minus 315 on Nascimento, plus 285 on Alan Baudot. I'll kick things off here. Very simple fight to break down. We got a grappler in Nascimento. We got a striker in Baudot. But the difference between these two guys, Nascimento actually deserves to be inside the UFC. Baudot, not so much, really. The guy came into the UFC off of a disqualification win after his opponent tested positive for weed a month or two after the fight actually took place. I know Todd Stout. He used to work out at the gym that I used to work at, and yeah, they popped him for marijuana. And the Quebec commissioner is just so stupid and behind the times that they don't even change it to a no contest. They actually change it to a win for the other opponent. So Baudot comes into the UFC off of a loss, pretty much, and then gets absolutely manhandled by Tom Aspinall. But the intriguing part of that Todd Stout fight was the fact that Todd Stout is known to be a knockout puncher. He's more of a striker that goes out there and tries to knock your head off, not a grapple fucker. And what did he do? He grapple fucked Alan Baudot, had a lot of success doing so, had a very close arm, I believe it was arm triangle choke at the ending of that second round, and then eventually found the rear naked choke in the third round to get that finish. Nascimento should be able to roll relatively easy here. I'm not sure if Baudot truly has that knockout power to put Nascimento down. I don't think he has the same type of striking skills that Chris Daukaus has been showing off in his last couple fights, and I think that's just going to make it even easier for Nascimento to close the distance, drag this fight to the ground, and then eventually find a choke. I'm going to call it arm triangle choke. I think that he's going to be able to find that relatively easy here. And Nascimento looked in solid shape as well once he hit the scales as well. I think that's going to play into his benefit very, very well here. The last thing I'll say about this, Baudot is a light heavyweight. He's not a heavyweight. He's a blown-up light heavyweight, does not deserve to be at 265 pounds. And unluckily for him, he's going up against a big jiu-jitsu brute in Nascimento, and I expect this fight especially to go under 1.5 here. So I'd personally have a bet myself at minus 145 on the under 2.5 here, as I do believe, or sorry, under 1.5 here, as I do believe that it would be very easy for Nascimento to drag this fight to the ground and get that submission. Z, I'll hand it on over to you in terms of how you feel about this fight and if you have any takes on it.
Well, we're talking about sloppy heavyweight bangers, and there's another sloppy heavyweight banger that just started, and I've got the under 1.5 for this LFA, Neves versus Gigante. But yeah, I like the doesn't go here. It's a little chalky, but I think there's a very clear path to victory, path to a finish for Nascimento. Like you alluded to, he should be able to get takedowns with ease. He should dominate Baudot on the mat, but he's not really a top-level heavyweight, and he was knocked out in his last fight out. Plus, Baudot does possess some spinning elbows, pretty light on his feet. At least he was at 205. So you could opt for Nascimento inside the distance. You get a better line there, but I just laid the chalk and took doesn't go the distance minus 350, and I put 3 units on that.
I like it. Warrior, I feel as though this is a spot that you like to target. That fight doesn't go to decision, or at least the under in this spot. How are you feeling about this fight?
Yeah, to kind of touch on your point, his fight was stout. I don't know how many takedowns he landed in that fight exactly, but the difference is one takedown and it can be over for Nascimento here. So one thing that I wrote before anything on my notes here was watch what Nascimento weighs in at. He weighed in at he tipped the scales his last fight versus Dawkins, and just watching that fight, it looked off. He looked off to me. It's a good previous fights he had weighed in at 255 and 250, I believe. So it's a good thing here that he weighed in at, I believe it was 259. So instead of tipping the scales, he did, to your point, look in better shape here. And I think it's pretty simple here. We don't have to dig too deep into technical analysis here. It could be one takedown and the fight's over for Nascimento. If you want to throw the under 1.5 aside and parlay, the fight doesn't go to decision. Instead of that, just do Nascimento in round 1. I think this should be a fairly easy fight for Nascimento. Previous to him getting knocked out versus Dawkins, I thought he showed pretty good striking ability. I think Dawkins' knockout is weighing heavy on a lot of people's minds. I think you need to forget that. This is a different fight. This is a different opponent. Nascimento is going to finish this fight in the very first round.
Yeah, Dawkins definitely shows a lot of improvements from fight to fight, especially with his hand speed and his accuracy, which is something that I don't think that Baudot actually possesses. And it seems like Z just cashes under 1.5 in this LFA fight.
Speaking of first round knockouts, yes, sir. 2 units.
Hopefully we get the same thing from Nascimento tomorrow with a submission.
Nice.
No, whatever the fuck it is. First round finish for Nascimento would be great. Narco Cop, I'm actually going to swing it on over to you. Do you have anything else to really throw into this matchup, or do you pretty much echo the same sentiments that we have?
I pretty much echo everything you guys have. I have Nascimento by submission. I mean, Baudot is so bad on the ground, man. He's literally clueless down there, and Nascimento is just gonna. The only thing I'm afraid of is getting some ground and pound and maybe stopping this guy. But I see him maybe turning his back if he's getting pummeled, and then he can put in that rear naked choke. And it's just the levels standing, it's pretty close to me. But the levels on the ground is insanely different. So that's where I see this fight going. And I don't think he's going to have a hard time taking him down either. I think it's going to be fairly easy. He's the much bigger guy. And then like you said, Baudot is a light heavyweight. He's not a heavyweight. So pretty much I'm in line with all you guys.
Perfect. I love it. I love when we're all on the same page. Warrior, you got something to say?
No, real quick. You were talking about how he's really a 205er. One thing that kind of stuck out to me right on tape with Baudot is that he's pretty light on his feet. He was moving around, and he had some good lateral movement. But the fact that he continues to fight at heavyweight, he took his second UFC fight at heavyweight, it's just mind-boggling. But anyway, I had Tom Aspinall via submission versus Baudot in that fight. I took a flyer on that, and he ended up getting the ground and pound. I believe it was like plus 1,000. But yeah, anyways, to Narco's point, I think a ground and pound finish is there as well for Nascimento. So, but hopefully not. Hopefully it's a submission. we're all happy.
Yeah, I definitely remember during that fight week, a lot of people were on that Asmaral sub prop, especially considering the number that it was at. Unfortunately for everybody, he decided to pull out his jiu-jitsu on Andre Arlovski instead of fucking Alan Baudot and pulls off the submission in that fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Francisco Figueiredo going up against Malcolm Gordon. Obvious chalk here on Baby Figgy, if that's what you want to call him. Minus 295 on him, plus 265 is the return on Malcolm Gordon. And I believe Z actually has a bet on this fight, and I'll actually hand it on over to him as well to kick off the breakdown for this fight as well.
Yeah, pretty easy fight in my opinion to read. Again, you could opt for a violence bet like it doesn't go or an under, but I took 120 or 1.2 units on Figueiredo inside the distance at plus 115. People have said, he's not Davison. He's not as good a striker as Sumaderji, but I don't think you need to be either of those things to knock out Malcolm Gordon. With all due respect, he doesn't take shots very well. He doesn't have a good chin. He doesn't react well to shots. And even in a lot of his wins, he gets rocked really bad. So I think Figueiredo is strong enough and a good enough jiu-jitsu player to avoid the submissions and just TKO him quick. So I don't know if the money line is warranted. That's where people can start to pump the brakes. He is a minus 300, but I've turned a minus 300 into a plus 115, and Gordon has been finished in all of his losses. So I think it stands to reason that if Figueiredo wins, it's going to be inside the distance.
All right, Warrior, how do you feel about this matchup, brother?
I don't have a lot to add there. I mean, this is another kind of lopsided fight. But to Z's point, I think if the fight does get extended and you're there sitting with a minus 330, I don't know how good you're going to be feeling if this goes to the scorecards. But I do like Malcolm Gordon's jiu-jitsu. I know he got subbed versus Amir Albazi, but Albazi is really good on the ground. And if there's any way he's going to pull this off, it's going to be via submission. But largely, I think it's going to be Figueiredo in round 1 or 2, I would say, via KO. It's just Malcolm Gordon is too fragile. Like to Z's point, he gets rocked even in his wins. All you got to do is find that chin, little gust of wind, and he's out of there. So pretty simple.
Narco Cop, I'll let you bring this one on home for us. How do you feel about Figueiredo versus Malcolm Gordon here?
Pretty much the same thing that Z and Warrior said. The only thing is I'm staying away just because Figueiredo doesn't really impress me. His striking is such low volume. I don't see a lot of pop in his punches. I know you don't need it with Gordon, like Z said, because Gordon is really fragile and he literally gets hurt almost every single fight. But the low volume, the hesitancy to throw when I watch him on tape, it's just a complete pass for me.
Yeah, this is an intriguing one. Malcolm Gordon is a guy that I've been following for a long time. I believe his second fight was actually with the promotion that I was helping out with, Substance Cage Combat, where he actually beat somebody from our gym, a guy named Ahmed Kakar, I believe it was. But I've been following him very closely. There was a couple high level Canadian MMA fights that he was involved with. Chris Kalidas, I believe he fought. I could be off on this. I don't know why I can't remember this, whether he fought Adrian Woolley or not. But also the Yanni Sherbatov fight. That was a very interesting one because Yanni Sherbatov, when he was on the rise before he even made it to the Ultimate Fighter, that was a guy that was not able to get a fight in the Canadian MMA scene. Nobody wanted to fight this guy. He had a ton of accolades with boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, sambo, all that shit. Nobody wanted to fight Sherbatov. He was this Russian kid from Montreal. Him and his brother opened up a gym, and it was just very difficult for anybody to fight Yanni Sherbatov. If you look at his earlier career, it's just scrubs and bums that were willing to take the fight with him, which is why he made it to the Ultimate Fighter with such a low record. I think he only came in to the Ultimate Fighter with the 4 or 5-0 record. So he, a lot of people were scared of him. But once we saw Eric Shelton go out there and beat him on the Ultimate Fighter, then people on the Canadian scene were willing to actually accept the fight with him as well. So when we had Malcolm Gordon and him going up against each other, I thought Yanni Sherbatov was going to walk through him, and he was close to doing so. He hurt him early in that fight, but then for some reason it was not able to get the finish. Gordon closes his distance, drags the fight to the ground, and then pulls off that submission. But I believe during that transition he had hurt something in that moment, which is why Sherbatov was not able to defend as best as he could. So that was in my eyes, that was an upset win. I thought if I would have lined that pre-fight, I would have put Malcolm Gordon probably probably at plus 250, plus 300. So he probably would have cashed. Well, he did cash as a pretty big underdog if there were actually odds attached to that fight. And then obviously he comes over to the UFC and we saw what's happened to him, especially with him trying to eat shots and come forward. And it just does not work out for him. Figueiredo, you guys touched on it very well. I'm not liking the fact that he's a little bit low volume and he just kind of waits for his shots and more of a pot shotter. And he does have some power in his eyes. I feel like enough power to actually go out there and hurt Malcolm Gordon and eventually put him away. But I feel a little bit more skeptical about it than I did it originally before I actually taped it. The last thing I'll say about that, I like the under 2.5 more than I do like the Figueiredo line. I'd rather take the violence bet here in case Figueiredo does, slip on a banana peel or just gas out trying to stalk him and then eventually find a submission or get submitted by Gordon. So I'd rather take the under 2.5 or the fight doesn't go to decision rather than taking the Figueiredo spot here. With that said, I still do think that Figueiredo wins this fight inside the distance at a decent clip. Narco Cop, go ahead, brother. What do you got?
One more thing. I know Figueiredo is also a 35er, a career 35er.
Yes.
And just recently has dropped to 25 in his last fight against Rivera. And to that point too, like Rivera is kind of fragile himself, to be honest. And he couldn't put him away. And to top it off, Rivera was actually putting it on him in round 3. So like, I don't trust Figueiredo. That's the bottom line and why I think the stay away is better for me in this spot. But again, yeah, Gordon is very fragile. I mean,
for me, what I get away from Figueiredo is also the lack of legitimate tape we have on him. I don't know about you guys, but I was only able to find like one regional fight for him other than that Jerome, obviously other than the UFC fight. So that's a little bit skeptical for me too in terms of having ultimate confidence. Z, you had something to add to this fight?
I just wanted to address the low volume, and I agree he is low volume, but in this type of matchup, I just need a guy who's going to throw hard down the pipe. I don't really need a guy to volume anybody. So I think throwing hard down the pipe is really going to get to Gordon because of his style of defense. And with him, it only takes one clean shot. So that would just be my counter to that. But fair play to both your points. If you want to opt for the under or if you want to stay away entirely, very reasonable.
I don't mind that take as well. Warrior, did you have something to say about this matchup, brother?
I would have liked to see how John Lineker versus Figueiredo went down. He has fought John Lineker. Take a look at that, his record. I would have loved to see that. I haven't seen that, but probably say that was a round 1 KO for Lineker.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. All right, let's move this train along because we got at least another 8 fights to get through for these guys. Next up, we got Anderson dos Santos going up against Miles Johns. Very intriguing matchup that we have here. Minus 160-ish on Miles Johns, plus 140 the return on Anderson dos Santos and Warrior. I'll let you kick this one off for us, brother. What do you got here? You are muted as well, just to let you know.
Honestly, I don't have too much as far as technical analysis. This feels like a fight Miles Johns should win. Anderson dos Santos is probably going to overextend a lot and try to make this a real fight, like a brawl. But I think Miles Johns has a lot of tools. I don't think we've really seen him put it all together inside the octagon. I feel like he has a lot of potential, but we just haven't seen it. I think his wrestling is good. His striking is good. This feels like a fight he should win. Like I said, Dos Santos is going to come in, try to brawl, but I think we're going to see a lot of Miles Johns wrestling. If he doesn't get caught in the guillotine, I don't see how Dos Santos is really going to win this fight, if I'm being honest with you. So
it looks like Warrior is going with his fellow Texan, Miles Johns, in this fight. Mike, how are you feeling about this fight, brother?
So, like, I'm a little higher. Like, a lot of people shit on Miles Johns, and I don't really see it. Like, the guy he's a good technical striker. He's got a really nice jab. The one thing that I saw on tape in this fight that might cause him problems is the fact that he seems to circle around the cage and then get caught on the fence a lot. And he did against Natividad. And Anderson swings pretty big. And then what I see is he shoots for the double leg after he swings, which will, I think, be there for him in this fight. Like, as far as Miles John getting stuck on a cage, Anderson throwing a 1-2 and then going for a double leg, trying to take him down. But for me, I'm just staying off. It's a dog or pass if I had to pick somebody, but I don't have a bet in this fight.
Yeah, I actually like Dos Santos here. Not enough to actually make a bet on my side here, but I do believe that he has a good shot of actually kind of creating chaos in a sense that Miles Johns won't be able to keep up with it, and then eventually finding a submission or at least rocking and clubbing and subbing him or something like that. Miles Johns is a wrestler. Also, he always has that wrestling type of striking style, which is those wide winging hooks, blitzing forward, and just trying to knock your opponent's head off. Doesn't really throw in crazy combinations. It's more so just to intimidate you with that power, and then eventually drop down for a single leg or a double leg, push up against the cage, get that wrestling going, try to grind you out. But I would like to see a little bit more combination work from him, especially to utilize that power that he has in his hands. We've seen in the past he does seem to slow down a little bit in the last rounds of his fights, and Anderson dos Santos is just a wild man at times, and I like the fact that he's kind of embracing his chaotic nature, because that's where he's able to find most of his success when he does get the wins. Martin Day probably did the stupidest thing that you could ever do in his fight against dos Santos here. Finally gets up to his feet and then decides to turn into Daniel Cormier, tries to throw Anderson dos Santos over his head, leaves his neck exposed, and gets guillotined and pays for it there. So we definitely know that Anderson dos Santos has that clamp if he needs it. I think his best shot here is more than likely he's going to give up that first round. I'd be surprised if he wins the first round. But after that, let that chaotic nature go. Let your wild striking go. Try to make Miles Johns go into desperation mode or that reflex of his, which is I'm going to go shoot if I find myself in trouble, and possibly dos Santos could be ready for some sort of guillotine or something like that. Or better case scenario for dos Santos finds a club and sub opportunity, especially when he has Miles Johns reeling, and maybe even try to time an uppercut, a knee or something, especially when Miles Johns is trying to close that distance and try to get a desperation takedown. But I do like dos Santos in this spot. I am going to favor the underdog in this spot. This is a possible round 3 spot as well for me too with dos Santos. I believe it's around plus 1,500, plus 1,750. I'd be looking at to take a little bit of a shot on that as well, just for degenerate's sake. But I do like dos Santos here. I don't know if it's because I just have I don't feel like I have a bias against Miles Johns. I don't know what it is. I just feel as though there are some times where he can get away with beating the regional level guys and get away with beating the mid to lower tier level guys. But there's just certain spots where Anderson dos Santos that once he introduces the chaos into the fight, he should be able to take advantage of some of his opponents. But let's see if he can do it effectively here against Miles Johns. And I'll say this, I know I said lower level UFC fighters. Obviously, he has a win over Adrian Yanez on the regional scene, and that's a big time win as well. But I do think that he does show some holes here, and once he starts continuously taking levels up in competition, it's only going to make him pay. And I think that Anderson dos Santos, a lot of people have kind of just written him off, considering he has a 21-8 record and started off his UFC career 0-2. But as he showed in his last fight, he does have fight in him, and he does have finishing capabilities. And I think it's live here to potentially finish Miles Johns via submission. Z, I'm going to let you finish up this matchup for us, brother. How do you feel about Anderson dos Santos and Miles Johns?
I'll let you know. Sorry, I'm watching more action that I have action on to the corner of my eye here. But
you have a bet on every LFA fight?
I got this one, and it's looking good for me, man. I got this one. But
armbars in.
Let her lock this up, man. I'll cash her and the under. But so with Miles Johns and Anderson dos Santos, I agree with you, Locke. I want to bet dos Santos, but there's a few things keeping me away from it. I think his pressure is definitely going to force Johns back to the cage. But then from there, I don't know what he's going to do with that. You know what I mean? If he shoots on Johns, I think Johns is a better grappler, stronger athlete as well. And on the feet, I respectfully disagree with Narco Cop. I don't think Johns is a great striker. He's got a powerful jab down the pipe, but he's a little bit low volume. He does have a good shell, keeps his hands up in good position. But I think seasoned strikers will exploit him. But Anderson dos Santos is not really a seasoned striker, more of a wild man throwing a big loopy overhand right, very aggressive fighter, and he's older. You know what I mean? I think the age difference is 27 to 35, and 35 is old for a bantamweight. So with all that being said, I am tempted on dos Santos as a plus 150, and if he hits, I'm going to say I regret passing a win, but and I just cashed 2 bets there. That's nice.
Hey.
But I think I'm going to have to be a little disciplined here and pass the fight. I think Miles Johns wins a decision. I don't really think he covers his number, so I would pump the brakes on putting him in parlays or laying a lot of money on him. But I'm just not confident in dos Santos enough to take the shot. And he's very hittable. He keeps his head on that center line. He gets hit a lot. So I do see Johns having success with the jab down the pipe, stopping that forward pressure.
All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Khalid Taha going up against Sergey Morozov. In terms of odds, we got -140 on Taha and +120 on Sergey Morozov, the Kazakhstani narco cop. I'm actually going to let you kick this one off for us, brother. How you feeling about this matchup?
So, me personally, I'm kind of high on Taha just because I think the guy's an athletic freak, for one. Dude can crack. He has a lot of power. He really impressed me in his actual loss to Barcelos. Like, just to stay in that fight the way he got beat. I mean, his defense was pretty bad because he was just getting lit up. But to have the cardio and to take that punishment and keep on coming, I mean, and I think he clipped Barcelos in that third round a couple of times himself and made Barcelos shoot. But in this particular fight, Morozov just seems kind of fragile to me. Umar, I think, hurt him. I think Rittenhouse knocked him out on the regional scene in M1. He's been hurt a couple of other times that I saw on tape. And I just think Taha on the feet, I think he can spark him and land that KO. So I took a little something on Taha at +500 by KO. Other than that, that's all I have on that fight.
All right. I'm actually on the Sergey Morozov side in this fight. I do believe that he has solid skills to actually make this fight, to make it look like he's a favorite in this spot. A very good level of competition on the regional scene. Obviously, we know the M1 Global and the Fight Nights Global scene is a little bit tougher than at least like the LFA and the TKO scenes that we're seeing on the North American side of things. So I like the level of competition that we've been seeing Sergey Morozov go up against over there in Russia. Not to mention, talk about a tough UFC debut going up against another UFC debutant who just is otherworldly in his skills. And I think that it might be playing a little bit into this betting line as well, considering the fact that Morozov was finished in his UFC debut. Khalid Taha has had a little bit more of an up and down UFC stretch. I'd say the brightest spot for him was starching Boston Salmon. I almost forgot about that guy, but starching him relatively quickly. And that was actually a fight that he came in as a slight underdog in that fight, if you guys remember that too. A lot of people were expecting Boston Salmon to put on a striking clinic on him there, but he just was not able to handle the power of Khalid Taha. I will say this, though. Narco, you are absolutely spot on in terms of his power and his explosiveness. I definitely think that's his best skills. He does apparently have an equivalent to a D2 wrestling background over there in Germany, but we obviously know that, no matter where you are in the world, wrestling is a completely different level, depending on whether you're in Russia, in the States, England, wherever the fuck you are. Seeing Nadir Rahmani have as much takedown success against Khalid Taha, seeing even Bruno Silva taking that entire second round off of one takedown was very impressive to me. Pretty much almost anybody is able to land a takedown on Taha, but it depends on if they can survive that early onslaught that they're going to be getting from Taha. Not to mention, this is Taha post USADA as well too, right? He's only had one performance post USADA, and it was that fight against Hani Barcelos. Again, his stock may have rose slightly a little bit, even though he ended up coming off from the losing side in that fight. But I do think that if Sergey Morozov can survive that first round, which I believe he does, he could be hittable at times, but I think his durability is starting to catch up to him once again. He did get knocked out by Reddinghouse, like you had said, a couple years ago, but he has avenged that loss, beat Reddinghouse over a solid 5 rounds, and I was coming into the UFC, obviously, off of that loss now. But I think that he will be able to enjoy that first round against Taha and then start to land takedowns in the second and third round. I think his striking is serviceable enough. I think he has pretty decent boxing. I don't think he has the same power as Taha, but I still think he has good enough striking that he should be able to stay away from the big power and then eventually start landing those takedowns in the second and third round. And I think his cardio is good enough to absolutely hold up as well. I think that's where Bruno Silva started to falter in that fight, is that he seemed to gas in that third round, which is where Taha was truly able to take advantage of him. But I do like Morozov in this fight. I took a shot on him at +125. I think that's a decent spot here. Like I said, I think it should be close to evens, maybe even Morozov as a slight favorite here. But I'm very intrigued to see how this fight goes, especially, Taha post USADA and not against a guy like Hani Barcelos, who we already know is a very proven fighter, even though he came out on the losing end last time around. So I like Morozov here. I'm going to take decision. I think the decision prop isn't not too bad either. I think Taha is still quite durable, still quite tough, as he obviously showed in the Hani Barcelos fight. So I do think that we'll see Morozov at least win rounds 2 and 3 in this fight with takedowns and control time. Z, I'll pass it on over to you, brother. How you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, so when I was looking at the tape, I was getting all gung-ho to bet Taha and maybe Taha by knockout. I still don't think Taha by knockout is a bad look at +400 because his left hook is tight and he throws steam. But speaking of throwing steam, I don't think he looked the same against Barcelos. Now, at first, I was like, oh, he went in there, tough fight versus Barcelos, who's a very, very highly skilled fighter, right? So I kind of gave him a pass. But when I watched the fights in succession, I just don't think he had the same type of fast twitch explosiveness that he had in his other fights. So I agree with you, Locke. I think that's a big question mark, or, could be a red flag, at least a question mark. And Sergey Morozov, he's not a bad fighter at all, good, decent striking, well-rounded, good grappling, like very experienced, has only lost to good fighters too. Shout out again to Uncle Wheezy, because he did a balls deep breakdown on this fight. And man, that guy brings the stats. I'll tell you that much. He's legit. So I don't hate a small shot on Morozov. I haven't bet the fight. But yeah, the biggest angle here, I think, is that USADA could really be playing a big factor with Taha's career. Last thing I'll say, though, is one of the specifics I noticed was Morozov does tend to hold that right hand low. And so a guy with a nice tight left hook can exploit that tendency. And I always, like, when I'm looking at stylistics and stuff, I like to look for tendencies, things that fighters do habitually. And so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Taha murks him and just knocks him out. But at the end of the day, if he's compromised from USADA, I don't like backing him. So yeah, it's going to be a stay away from me. But betting wise, I would say take Morozov or take Taha knockout.
Warrior, both Mike and Z definitely alluded to the fact that the best way that Taha wins this fight is knockout. And at plus 500, that's a great line. And I think that's probably the way that people should be going, especially if they're betting Taha. Do you see any other paths to victory for him in this fight? And ultimately, who do you end up seeing win in this fight?
I'll do you one better. Taha round 1 KO is plus 1,000. I think a lot of his success is going to be front loaded in this fight. I think the fact that he hits so hard is probably a good thing for Morozov here. Once he realizes how hard this guy hits, I think he's going to tie up. And I saw a lot on tape. You give this guy double underhooks, you're going down. The difference with Bruno Silva, I know Bruno Silva had a little bit of success in that fight, but Morozov is so much bigger than Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva was formerly at 125, I believe. Morozov for this weight class is pretty fucking big. He's pretty fucking physical. And I just think as the fight extends, I think it's going to go towards the side of Morozov. Like I said, plus 1,000 for KO for Taha in round 1. But as the fight extends, I'm not confident Taha looks very good throughout the 15 minutes. Like I said, his success is front-loaded in my opinion. And since when did it matter that you took a beating against a high-level guy like Ronnie Barcelos and we're rating him higher than what he actually is? I think he is overrated, to be honest with you. Just because he took a beating in Barcelos' fight, I mean, virtually there was nothing there. He did nothing in that fight. He was supposed to get his ass whooped in his favor, and he did, but I don't think there was anything there. I think the USADA, like you guys were mentioning, will play a factor. I think down the stretch, Morozov, and I like decision as well, plus 225.
I like it. The one thing I'll say about Morozov here as well, I think he has a bright future inside the UFC, but he still just needs to get a little bit more favorable matchups as well. I think that this is a favorable matchup for him. The Nurmagomedov fight, I'm just going to completely scratch that one off the record, especially when I'm taping and moving forward, because how can you really cap that fight in terms of matching it to whoever he's going to be facing moving forward here. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got Amanda Lemos going up against Montserrat Conejo. In terms of odds, we're looking at heavy chalk here, minus 525 on Lemos and plus 450 on Montserrat Conejo. And I believe we're right back to me in terms of doing the breakdowns here. Yeah, I'll kick things off for you guys. I do like Lemos in this spot. Am I going to pay that minus 525? More than likely not. I'd rather take her inside the distance or at least via KO. I do believe that's the best way to approach this fight. Does Conejo find success once again with that head and arm throw and keeping her in that bully beatdown mode? I know my guy Warrior Battle MMA is still has some PTSD from that last fight. I can't wait to get back over to him for this breakdown. But I'd be very surprised if Conejo finds similar success. I think that Lemos, will fully utilize her 4-inch height and reach advantage that she'll have in this fight. Keep her on the outside, land the big bombs from the outside, and then eventually find that finish. The one thing here is, though, Ruiz never been finished. Only loss was to former UFC fighter Danielle Taylor, but I don't think she's ever fought anybody like Lemos in the past, and that's going to be the difference here. And especially at the weigh-ins this morning, we saw it. She came in at 113 pounds. That just lets you know how small this girl is. She's an atom weight. She's an atom weight fighter, and I can't wait for the UFC to eventually adopt that division, because I believe that division is much deeper than what we have at 145 pounds. So you might as well just get rid of 145 at this point in time. But in regards to this fight, I think Lemos looks good enough. She looked great at the weigh-ins, in my opinion, looks shredded, caught up, ready to go. And I think that it's going to be very difficult for Ruiz to continuously close the distance while going through a hell and a high water. And I think that the spots that I'm looking at, Lemos inside the distance, Lemos via KO, and Lemos even in round 1 plus 300, I take a little bit of a sprinkle on that, because I just don't think that Ruiz will be able to handle that pressure. Last thing I'll say about this, and then I'll flip it on over to Z. Seeing the way that Lemos disposed of Lavinia Souza was very impressive. Souza was one of those girls that was like former Invicta champion. You know, she had her success. She even came into the UFC, albeit against Alex Chambers. She was a minus 1,400 favorite. That just lets you know what kind of skill level that girl has. But then Lemos is just on a completely different level when you're talking about striking and power. And we definitely saw it in that fight. So to get finished by a power jab and then ground and pound, absolutely crazy, especially against, in my opinion, pretty high-level woman at that weight class in Lavinia Souza. So Lemos has a very bright future, in my opinion. Z, I'm pretty certain you have a bet on Lemos in this spot. Explain as to why and eventually how you see this fight going down.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said, except maybe Souza being a high-level fighter. But I don't really think that's relevant, because what I was looking at is just the evolution of Lemos, you know? Even if you go back to her Leslie Smith fight in 2017, did she get walked down? Yeah. Did she lose that fight? Yeah. But she was throwing some pretty big offense, and she's got that, you know, Figueiredo or that Alcantara style, that wide stance, those low hands, everything's with power. So even in that loss, up 20 pounds, she showed some good things, you know, in that fight. Came back, beat Miranda Granger, grabbed the neck, no problem there. She fought my bae, Mizuki Inoue, who, don't sleep on Mizuki Inoue. I still think she's pretty good. She's durable, strong, and she got dropped hard in that first round. So again, shows that Lemos is lethal, or at least dangerous. And then finally in the Souza fight, it was just the composure and the staying tight, staying technical, the heavy leg kick. Just, she really looked to put her whole game together, and she still displayed everything that she's shown in the past. You know, I mean, she's just getting better and better, improving. So yeah, I took Lemos inside the distance at plus 120. I put 1.2 on that. You might want to opt for the doesn't go, just because the difference between the two is very small. It's like minus 105 for the doesn't go. So fair play if you want to include Montserrat's chance to just pepper her out from the head and arm throw. I just don't think it's likely at all. But again, fair play. And then I also took 40 or 0.4 units on Lemos in round 1 plus 300, like you said, Lock. I just think those big shots down the pipe are going to be huge. The leg kick's going to chop her down. And I just don't think Montserrat's at this level. Like you said, she lost to Daniel Taylor, a much smaller woman, much smaller fighter, right? And she's only fighting much smaller fighters. And she got kind of lit up in that fight. You know, it wasn't brutal, it wasn't bad, but if Daniel Taylor's doing that to her, Amanda Lemos has long-range bombs down the pipe, good technical proficiency. I think she steamrolls Ruiz. But you're looking at a minus 500, minus 600. Fair play to you if you got in earlier on the money line. That's probably a better angle long-term. But where it's at now, I'd prefer to opt for the bets that I did. Or again, you could opt for just the doesn't go the distance to cover the other side as well.
Warrior, I can't remember the last time that we've seen a fighter lose their UFC debut and then make such a dramatic change in their game and their physique, obviously dropping down weight classes and all that stuff, and then having as much success as she did, obviously, after that Leslie Smith fight. How do you think she fares in this fight against Ruiz? And Z, I'll get back to you as soon as Warrior's done with his take here, brother.
Similar to the thoughts of Z, when I had Lemos in her 2 fights after that Leslie Smith fight. And when I watched that Leslie Smith fight, I think it was obvious she's in the wrong weight class. And even in a loss, that's one of the more impressive debuts or performances you can really find, like as far as technique is concerned and just the power she had. That's unheard of at what is this, 115 or 125 weight class? It's kind of unheard of, man. It's and shout out to Danielle Taylor, one of the toughest girls to look good against. Not even Weili Zhang looked good against her. Anyways, that's beside the point. I still have nightmares about Cheyenne Buys and Conejo. To your point, dude, I had Buys in there, and I just thought it was it's really easy to beat this girl. You take the center of the octagon. I know we talk, or some people talk about her wrestling credentials, but she doesn't have any wrestling. She has a head and arm throw, and that's it. All you got to do is be aware of that right overhook. Don't let her get her right overhook over your head or across your left shoulder or whatever. And there's no issues. Take the center, leg kicker. But I think Lemos is going to do more than that. I think she's going to take her fucking head off, and I think it's going to be like a round 1 KO. Lemos is just violent, man. She's a different kind of fighter, and I'm not going anywhere near this fight just because of the PTSD, like you mentioned. But I think Lemos is a level above here, and I think she's in line for a bigger fight than this. I don't even know why she's getting this fight. She deserves a really high-level fight next after she gets the job done on Saturday. So round 1 KO for Lemos isn't too bad. I agree with that spot, and it should be a pretty violent finish.
I truly expected you to have actually a bet on this fight to potentially get your money back off of that.
It was so bad, bro. I just don't even
like, historically speaking. I know your betting style, and I feel like you never bet chalk of any sort. And that was one spot that you actually ended up taking the chalk and then ended up paying for it. And I'm assuming having that PTSD, you don't want to go through that once again.
I mean, yeah, it's that exactly. And just the fact that Cheyenne Buys made that fight a lot harder than she had to, man. And it's just like, Safe Sayud's in her corner, right?
Yeah.
Just shouting at the top of his lungs instructions and her not listening, her crashing the pocket a little too hard every time and giving Conejo the fight she wanted against the cage. It was just so frustrating, man. This fight is easy for anybody that is competent. Cheyenne Buys clearly wasn't. I think Lemos is. Even if she gets that right overhook, I don't even think it's going to be a problem for Lemos. It should be an easy walk in the park for Lemos here.
I like it. Z, you were going to say?
I just wanted to add a few things. She's bringing in attributes to this fight. I think she's 4 inches taller with 4 inches of reach. That's substantial, and it bodes well for her style of long-range, heavy power shots. And then Ruiz is scrappy. She's pretty tough, and she comes to fight. But even if she's getting that arm throw, the head and arm throw, I think Lemos can take the back off of that. That's why I opted for inside the distance instead of the knockout, because she might just take the back, grab the neck. But yeah, that was all. It was mainly just the attributes that she brings to the table here.
I like it. Mike, bring us on home with this matchup, brother.
So that last point Z just made, like, I was originally going to look at her at KO, and then I said, you know what? Ruiz is just so wild with these head and arm throws. She might take her back, choke her out. Like, Lemos is competent down there, you know. And the other thing, initially when I looked at this fight, I watched that Danielle Taylor fight, and to me, that's a bad look. I mean, Danielle Taylor is another atomweight too. Like, she's really small. And then now she's fighting Lemos, that's huge for this division, big power puncher. Like, I honestly don't see a path where Ruiz wins this fight. Like, she's screwed everywhere, to be honest. Like, yeah, that had an arm throw, but I just don't see it in this fight. Like, Lemos is so strong, big. So I just took her inside the distance at plus 115. I think that's a great line. You're turning a minus 550, minus 600 favorite into a plus 115, which I think that's the most likely path. Like, yeah, she could win a decision, but I really think, like, the stoppage is a very high possibility here. And I just don't see what Ruiz has for her, to be honest.
I love the pre-fight build up to that Cheyenne Buys and Ruiz fight, where Baze was just saying, I know all she has is a shitty ass head and arm throw. Yeah, she's still getting caught in it. Probably one of the worst pre-fight. Okay, don't worry, Warrior. We'll move on from this fight so we can fuck it up. All right. Next up, we got Daniel Rodriguez taking on short notice Preston Parsons. In terms of odds, obviously chalk on Rodriguez here at minus 325, plus 295 is the return on Preston Parsons. Z, I'm actually going to let you kick this one off for us, brother. How are you feeling about this short notice Parsons, and do you think he has what it takes to take out D-Rod?
No. Short notice and short range. What I noticed in his fights is he really likes to operate at that short range, knees and elbows, tight range punches. But D-Rod is a serious dude with a serious southpaw skill set. And I really think he put it all together his last fight out versus Mike Perry, a guy who finished Preston Parsons. At least that's what Tapology says. I know Locke was alluding to some of those were wrong, but of the fights that I did see, I think Preston Parsons is pretty well built, pretty strong, but I just don't think he can hang with D-Rod on the feet. And I think D-Rod's going to maintain that range, shoot down the pipe, and just box him up. So betting wise, again, I would probably opt for D-Rod inside the distance. I think it's minus 170, 180-ish. Or you could just say fight doesn't go the distance, chalk here around minus 300. But Preston has never been the distance. He's only been out of the first round once, apparently. And he only made it to the second round. So I don't see him going the in his debut versus the toughest fighter he's ever fought. So give me Daniel Rodriguez knockout round 1 or 2.
Warrior, I want to get your thoughts on this. I find it with this Combat Night Pro promotion that Parsons was fighting for, as well as WXC, a promotion that Justin James used to fight for. I'm sure you can remember it off the top of your head. Their cages are so fucking small compared to even the small cage in the UFC. And I felt like it really benefited a guy like Preston Parsons, who didn't need to close that much distance to get his hellacious style off and then eventually land takedowns to get those submissions or ground and pound finishes. One, how much do you think that's going to play into a factor, with him going into a bigger cage this time around? And two, do you ultimately think he springs the upset over D-Rod here?
I think he's definitely up against it here. Honestly, I watched tape on him first. I'm pretty familiar with Daniel, but I kind of like what he presented. I like his wrestling. I like how big he is for the weight class. He looks really strong. I think he's going to do well in the UFC, but this is a tough fight, and I think he has to have like a near perfect kind of game plan to beat D-Rod. And it might be recency bias, but the fact that Mike Perry, once he started wrestling, I know Mike Perry's strong as hell and he can probably take anyone down. He continues to say he's not a wrestler, he's a fucking striker. But honestly, Mike Perry is a fucking grappler, and he's a damn good one at that. I don't know what he doesn't understand, but I think Preston Parsons, it looks good overall. I like what I saw on tape. It's a good thing he is fighting in a smaller cage in this fight. If he was fighting in the big cage, I think the odds would probably be a little bit wider for D-Rod here. But it comes down to, is he going to give D-Rod the space to operate? Because if he does, he's going to look like a fish out of water. It's as simple as that. If he's not hammering that low kick from range, if they are at range and he's not having success in the pocket, he's going to look like a fish out of water. He needs a low kick, and he needs to drive into D-Rod, use his small cage, and he needs to wrestle. I like his jiu-jitsu, but like Z said, I don't think he's ever been out of the second round. Maybe, what did you say? It was once?
Only been to the second round twice.
But at the same time, has D-Rod fight the kind of wrestling? If Preston Parsons does take that path, what's to say his cardio doesn't look a little worse for wear in round 3 or round 2 later on in the fight? So essentially, I think Parsons has to attack with a wrestling-heavy game plan. He needs to watch out for the guillotine. If he's a little overextending, he shoots a bad takedown. But I do like Preston Parsons going forward. So ultimately, I think he's up against it here, but we'll see. I don't have a bet in this fight. I think largely probably D-Rod finish. But I'm not counting out Preston Parsons. That's all I got to say.
I like it. Mike, it's pretty much been insinuated by pretty much everybody so far that Parsons probably needs takedowns to win this fight. Just statistically speaking, Mike Perry went 2 of 4 on takedowns on Rodriguez, and Nicholas Dalby went 0 of 7 of takedowns on Rodriguez here. How do you think that Parsons fares against D-Rod in this matchup?
So I'll take it back to that Perry fight. I read an article on that Perry fight with Parsons, and everything that I read said that Parsons was dominating that fight until he got caught with a knee. That's how he got knocked out. He got caught with a knee. And to what Warrior said, I'm kind of impressed with what I see with Parsons. The dude is strong, has good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. But in this particular fight, D-Rod is a 10th planet guy. He knows how to grapple. And then the one thing that I saw with Parsons is when he shot, he put his neck out there all the time. And with a guy like D-Rod, he'll snatch up that neck when he can. And for me, getting a plus 1,600 on D-Rod by submission is a pretty good bet, to be honest, just because of how often I think Parsons is going to shoot and how many opportunities D-Rod will have for that guillotine.
And we've already seen Parsons get submitted by a guillotine in his last loss to Valdir out of Ujo, who is probably a higher level black belt than what D-Rod brings to the table. But still, at the skill set that D-Rod brings to the table here, he could potentially snatch that up as well. Yeah, I see it pretty much the same as you guys. I thought I would be stronger on Daniel Rodriguez before the tape, but after running the tape, I do think that Parsons has a little bit of a shot here, especially considering the Banshee type style that he fights with. Just fucking moves forward, throws hell in high water at his opponents, and Daniel Rodriguez could have the greatest footwork and the greatest jab and all that type of stuff, but it's very difficult to deal with a guy that's just going to be just running forward at you, not really giving a fuck about what's being thrown back at him. I don't know how much the jab is truly going to affect him early, but as soon as he starts to eat accumulation of jabs, I'm sure he's going to start to back off a little bit. I do think that he's one of those guys that is a kill or be killed kind of guy. I'd be surprised to see this fight even go to a decision. Ultimately, I ended up picking up D-Rod to win this fight by second round knockout, as I do believe that's when we're going to see Parsons start to slow down, and then eventually the jab and the striking of Daniel Rodriguez start to come to fruition. Not to mention, it's probably going to extract very desperate takedowns from Preston Parsons. So the potential of the guillotine is there, but the potential of a knee up the middle. Rodriguez is still a big dude at this weight class. That's definitely a tool that I feel that he can use in this. And then obviously the uppercut is another great tool to combat desperation takedowns as well. So I do like D-Rod in this spot as long as he survives that the early onslaught here. I wouldn't mind taking D-Rod. I will say this could be a potential live betting opportunity as well. We could potentially get a better line on Daniel Rodriguez after round one, as I do believe the strongest round that Parsons will have is round one. So that is something to keep an eye on in case it goes into round two. But yeah, I'm picking Rodriguez second round knockout. Mike, you had something to interject, brother?
Just one more thing, with Parsons, he's fought decent competition on the regional scene. Just he's not fought like a bunch of cans. He's fought Bahamondes, who's in the UFC. I'm not saying he's the highest level guy, but what I'm trying to say is he hasn't fought complete cans on the regional scene. So he's been tested on the regional scene. So he's not going to be like a fish out of water from what I saw on tape.
Looks like Blencow just got to get a third round TKO finish over Dayana Silva. Big win for Blencow there, especially via finish. But yeah, it looks like we're pretty much all on the Daniel Rodriguez side here, but we do give some credence to the fact that Preston can make this a much closer fight than the odds actually indicate. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got, this is the first fight on the main card. So I do want to remind you guys, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe, and you guys can find the Twitter handles and pages of these fellas in the description below. So just click that description and then click on the link of these guys and hit them where to follow, because I promise they'll be blessing your timeline with some MMA knowledge that you guys will most definitely need, especially when you guys are handicapping fights. All right, let's get into the first main card fight of the night. We got Billy Quarantillo going up against Gabriel Benitez, and in terms of odds, we're looking at minus 160 for Gabriel Benitez, plus 140 for Billy Quarantillo, and I believe we have Warrior kicking off this breakdown for us. Warrior, how do you see this fight going down?
Initially, this was probably the first fight I taped for the week, and just because I had a feeling it was this feels like a "what have you done for me lately" kind of spot, and the odds I felt like opening wise, and the fact that they got hammered down a little bit to Gabriel Benitez, it was exactly that. I mean, Billy Q, if you can count on him to do one thing, is make a fight nasty, dirty, and gritty, and it's as simple as that. I think Gabriel Benitez to cover minus 200 or whatever he was at initially. I have Billy Q. I like Billy Q on the money line. That was my first bet of the week. But Billy Q's not going to give him any space to look minus 200. Billy Q's been finished once in his career. I believe it was left head kick about 5 years ago. And Gabriel Benitez certainly does possess real power in his kicks, but I don't think Billy's going to give him space to operate. I think he's going to make this a classic Billy Q fight. And I think we're going to come out at the end of this. It was just holy shit, everyone's just down on Billy because he let everyone down in that Gavin Tucker fight. I believe I saw 90% Billy Q in that fight and 10% Gavin Tucker. But this really feels like a "what have you done for me lately" kind of spot, and I feel like value is definitely on Billy Q here. I think he's going to grind out a decision win here.
I love that you started off this breakdown by saying, "What have you done for me lately?" Because that is rule number one, or at least number one thing that you should think about when you're trying to cap MMA, because it's definitely very heavily influenced by what happened in your last fight. Mike, how do you feel about this matchup?
So I kind of agree with Warrior. I think it's a dog or pass spot. The one thing is, Billy brings the fight to people. He's a pretty violent guy. it makes it hectic. Small ring here. I think he's going to be able to close the distance on Benitez. I'm afraid that he's going to take a little too many leg kicks because, I mean, we all know Benitez can really kick. And for me, I took the under 2.5 at plus 145 just because of how Billy fights. Billy goes for it. I could see him getting caught with like a head kick too here, like if he just stands out there. But then again, I could see him pressuring Benitez throughout the fight. He has a path of taking him down, which Benitez, to his credit, like he has very good get-ups. He doesn't stay down there. I know my friend Z over there, salivates at Benitez, but like to me, this fight, it's pretty like dog or pass for me. Like you either take the dog or you pass it. I don't see Benitez, like Warrior said, covering that big price tag right now, just because it's smaller cage. Billy pressures a lot. He's not going to give him a lot of those kicking opportunities either, which I think Benitez is going to need to succeed. So for me, I just got the under 2.5 at plus 145. I think getting a nice plus number in a Billy fight is pretty good.
I like it. Yeah, I felt like I was one of the few guys that was actually on Gavin Tucker the last time around with Billy Quarantillo because I felt like we just needed somebody that was technically a much better striker than Billy Quarantillo, which I believe Gavin Tucker was. And I think a lot of people were reading far too much into that Rick Glenn fight for Gavin Tucker, which is why everybody's like, oh, Billy Q, this is his forte. He drowns people and then eventually finishes them late, which is exactly what we saw with Gavin Tucker and Rick Glenn. But I truly believe that was an anomaly of a fight for Gavin Tucker, especially with that type of performance. And I was happy to get the number that I got on Gavin going into the Quarantillo fight. Everybody called me a nutcase. Everybody called me a fucking jackass for taking Gavin Tucker in that fight. So it's always nice to be on an island for those types of fights and obviously coming out on the right side here. But with Gabriel Benitez, I think that Gavin Tucker is a much better striker than Gabriel. Gabriel, we obviously know his best asset, as Mike stated, was his kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, head kicks, all of that, especially the body kicks. That's probably his forte, where he's really able to expose his opponents and kind of just take advantage of that and really hammer it home. The issue here, though, is Billy Quarantillo. I don't know why he doesn't run with this persona, but he is the Homer Simpson of MMA. He takes his shit kicking in like the first round and a half, and then starts to pour it on, gets stronger as the fight goes on, as his opponent starts to wear down and the cardio starts to go down. It seems like Quarantillo only gets stronger the longer fights go. I would love to see Billy Quarantillo in a 5-round fight. I don't know if we're ever going to see it because I don't think he's going to make it to that championship level. He could if he continues to make progression, but what we see right now, I don't think he's a championship level fighter, but he should be able to beat a guy like Gabriel Benitez, especially keeping him on the back foot for the majority of the fight. We all know it's always hardest to be effective with your kicks when you're on the back foot, and that's what Billy Q does very, very well in this fight, and I think he's going to do that here against Gabriel Benitez. So he'll probably give up that first round. That's almost a given in almost every single Billy Quarantillo fight, but after that, I think he's going to start to take over. I think he's going to put the pressure on Gabriel Benitez. I don't know if he'll finish Benitez. I'm actually going to take him by decision. I think that's the best way that he wins this fight. But I do like Billy Q here. I think he bounces back after that Gavin Tucker loss and comes home with a decision victory. Mike, what do you got, brother?
One more thing I didn't mention is that Benitez is dropping down to 45 now. Yeah. And his two, one by KO, I think, and one by sub, I believe, or they might be both by KO, we're at 45. So I don't know if his chin is not better down here or what's going on, like because of the weight cut. That's just all I wanted to say. I mean, this fight is at 45, not at 55, which he normally fights at.
Well, I believe he's only ever fought at 55 twice in the UFC, and then every other time has been at 45. So I'm not entirely sure why he went up in weight, and even after coming off of a win, why he would decide to go back down to 145 pounds, especially after having that gaffe against Jonathan Pierce where he didn't end up making weight. But makes weight this morning, no problems, no issues, looked great on the scale. So, props to him for actually making the weight this time around, and hopefully fighting tomorrow. We haven't made it to the cage yet, but hopefully he actually makes it to the cage. Z, how do you feel about this matchup, brother?
Man, the bookie last time they opened my boy Mowgli as an underdog versus Justin James, and this time they opened him as a dog.
Atrocious.
They opened him as a dog versus Billy Q. I know in most books it was already corrected by that point, but the initial opener did have Mowgli as a dog, and I don't know what the bookie's on about. I don't know what you guys are on about. I got Mowgli here, folks. I think look, people will say he hasn't beaten anybody, but his losses are all to super legit guys. And you want to talk about, oh, maybe his chin's not that good at 45. No, it's because he got hit by Sadiq Youssef with a crazy counter, and then he got hit with a flush head kick from Andre Fili. Like, those are heavy strikes to be taking, right? Fair play, you can factor in the chinny factor, right? But I think when I watch the tape, I think Billy Q is at a severe speed disadvantage here, big time. And then if you look at how he got knocked out many years ago, it was from southpaw head kick. Same with his last fight versus Gavin Tucker. Gavin was having a ton of success from the southpaw stance. Mowgli is a very seasoned southpaw striker, slams the shin into the inside of the lead leg, into the body, up high, snipes down the pipe. Very, very good. And also is a guy who always fights on the back foot. So I do agree that Billy's going to be pressuring in to Mowgli, but that's pressuring into a buzzsaw. And if you're not a fast striker, if you can't compete with him on the feet, I think there's going to be a lot of damage inflicted on Billy Q early, especially that knee up the middle that is a great tool to stop forward pressure. You slam a couple of those home, you short stop on a guy, it can really slow him down. So I understand the angle, like, okay, it's going to be pressure. Billy's a momentum-based fighter, but I just don't see him having the speed or the striking ability. And look, guys, I'm a fan of Billy Q. I actually really like his fighting style. But let's be honest, he doesn't have any signature wins. He hasn't competed against anybody of this level. His wins are, with all due respect, Kamela Kirk on Contender, Jacob Kilburn, Spike Carlisle, who is entertaining and dangerous in the first round, but gas is bad. And then, with all due respect, Kyle Nelson, who also gas is really bad, especially at 145. So
Benitez beat.
What's that, Warrior?
Who was Benitez beat? Sorry. I just had to.
Go for it.
No, you're right. But the point is, he hasn't beaten anybody that great, but his losses are to very good fighters, to Omar Morales, Sadiq Youssef, Enrique Barzola, in a fight that he actually fought very well in my opinion. He displayed that get-up game that Narco was talking about. And I honestly believe that if this fight happens today, they're going to score it for Mowgli, because they tend to favor damage over blanket control, like, in a bigger way nowadays. So with all due respect, boys, I'm going with Mowgli, and I hope some more money comes in on Billy and it gives me minus 150 on Mowgli, because I would probably take the shot there. I also don't hate taking a shot on Mowgli by knockout, because, again, the speed advantage is big. He fights well off the back foot. He's a southpaw striker, and those are tools that have historically gotten to Billy Q, who, once again, I respect Billy. I really do like him as a fighter, and I think he's a great tool for us gamblers to use against guys who gas out. If he's going up against a guy with a shallow gas tank, yeah, bet on Billy Q. Take that third round prop. It's always crazy odds. But this time around, I think he's walking into a buzzsaw.
No worries. I was on an island in the last Billy Q fight. Maybe it'll pay off for you this time around. Mike, what were you saying, brother?
You know what I'm going to say is, in that last fight with Tucker, what Tucker really did, and this is the only fight I've really seen Billy Q slow down, and he did slow down big time in that third round, is that he worked the body a lot. Knees up the middle, kind of like what Z said. Like, that might be like something that really might work for Benitez, like to kind of use those body kicks, the knees to, and kind of slow Billy down when it comes, for his gas tank in the third, because we know he has it. But Tucker took it out of him, I think, in the last fight with his body shots.
I think a lot, too, was the takedowns of Tucker. I don't think Mowgli can replicate that in any way. Tucker kind of offset the Billy Q pressure with takedowns of his own. I know Billy Q didn't lay on his back too much, but I think big factor there too was the takedowns of Gavin Tucker as well there.
That's fair, but I would just add that if Billy Q is getting takedowns and Mowgli keeps popping back up, that work rate could tire Billy out too, or at least like both guys will be getting tired.
Essentially, kind of the same thing as Gavin Tucker taking him down and
right, just making him work.
Yeah.
All right, I like it. Let's move on to the next fight here. Talking about guys who gas. We got Rodolfo Vieira going up against Dustin Stoltzfus. Chalk here once again on Rodolfo Vieira, minus 210 on him, plus 190, plus 185-ish is what we're getting back on Dustin Stoltzfus. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we're starting off with Mike for this breakdown. Mike, how do you feel about this matchup between Vieira, the high-level BJJ fighter, and Stoltzfus?
So we all know, like, Vieira's gas tank is just, like, you go back and watch that Fluffy fight, like, the dude is gassed at 3 minutes into the first round. Like I don't even think he worked that hard. Like, he had him in mount. Like, I have no idea. Like, I know the guy is built really well, like, so muscle, needs oxygen, all that. He's probably, that's probably some kind of hindrance to his cardio. But to me, in this particular fight, like, I took the alternate line of under 2.5. I got it at minus 185. I think that's a bargain in this fight. Like, just the way Vieira fights, the way he gasses, which I think opens up opportunities for Dustin later on in the fight. That's what I took. I wouldn't blame you if you took, Vieira sub first round. Like, yeah, it's pretty good probability. Like, yeah, he's such a high level BJJ guy that he can sub anybody, like, when he gets him down there. And I'm pretty sure he's so physical, he's going to be able to get Dustin down there. Dustin, I believe, is a black belt in BJJ, but again, there's levels, right? This guy's on another level, a black belt BJJ. So my look on this fight is I want to live bet this fight, to be honest. Like, I want to see what Dustin does after that first round. How does he make Vieira work for those takedowns? Does he make him, is he able to, do something on the ground, get up, make him work? And then if I see that, it might be a good opportunity to bet Dustin at a better price than what he is right now, after him, probably getting dominated in the first round.
Yeah, I like that take here as well. I am ultimately going to be siding with the Vieira side of things here. I just think it's a little bit too easy for Dustin to be giving up takedowns here. I think Vieira, his strength and his takedowns will come into play. I think he'll be successful in getting it to the ground, and then from there he should be able to snatch up that sub. But if he doesn't, man, it's going to be a very tough task for him to do it once again in the second round. Now, I had somebody in my comment section on one of my earlier podcasts that I did this week talking about how I'm just writing off Vieira and how he's, I say that he only has 6 or 7 minutes to get it done, yet he has a win in the 9th minute against Oscar Piechota. All 4 of us on this fucking panel know that Oscar Piechota is a notorious gasser as well too. So there's no weight to that argument. Not to mention the other fight that went past that 7-minute mark was against another guy on the regional scene who was like 4-2 or 4-3 at the time. That guy was coming off a 2-year layoff and then has yet to fight since that fight as well. So that just lets you know what kind of level of competition he's going up against to be able to snatch a submission that late into his fight. I just don't think that Stoltzfus will have the submission defense to fend off an arm triangle or whatever it might be that Vieira wants to throw at him. The guy is just so big and strong and physical that I think it's going to be very very difficult for opponents to deal with that. I feel like Anthony Hernandez almost accepted the fact that he was going to be taken down and just drilled submission defense for the entirety of his camp. Just, I don't care if I get taken down. Let's just fucking 2-on-1 with the rear naked choke. Make sure that he doesn't get the rear naked choke that way. Whatever it might be, just defend, and your opportunity is going to come. And that's exactly what happened with Hernandez getting that finish in his own right. I just don't think that Stoltzfus brings that type of grit and that type of submission defense to the table here. Anthony Hernandez seems to be a little bit of a laughingstock amongst most people, but the people that know him even before he came to the UFC know that he's the real deal. He has good technique. He has good skills, is very talented as well, but it just kept on coming on the losing end against some weird opponents. Kevin Holland was able to dispose of him. He had a good one against Junyoung Park, I believe, where he darts choked him and got the finish there. But the Vieira fight, I'm glad that he got that victory and he was able to get his hand raised that night. But in terms of this matchup in particular, I think that jiu-jitsu is just going to be a little bit too much. Am I playing Vieira at minus 210? No, I'm not trusting anybody with that bad of a gas tank anymore. I'm not saying that I bet him last time around. I didn't bet him last time around either. But I think if you want to attack this fight and back Vieira, you just take the inside the distance, or you just take him or you take the unders in this fight. The under 1.5 plus 112, that could be an intriguing spot if that's something that you guys want to attack. I think that's his best way to win this fight. And then obviously Vieira by submission minus 110, pretty obvious, right? That's probably the way that he's going to win this fight. Z, how do you feel about this matchup? And do you think that Stoltzfus has the chops to pull off the upset here?
I mean, Rodolfo Vieira's red flags are so big that you can formulate that argument for just about anybody, but I honestly don't think Dustin's the guy. I think he is going to get taken down early. And even in that fight versus Fluffy, Rodolfo had good positions early. He just got really wild and was dropping for all kinds of stuff, giving away position, if I recall correctly. And talking about jiu-jitsu champions, there's Ari Faris in the LFA who's about to fight. So if you guys are watching this and want to jump on something, I think that's not a bad look. But in short, I don't think Dustin's the guy. He does have a black belt in jiu-jitsu himself, but like you said, there's levels to this. Rodolfo Vieira, multiple-time world champion, ridiculously strong. I wish he would move up to 205, or I wish there was a 195-pound division, because I think he's really sucking too much weight. But yeah, I think that early danger is too much to take a shot on Stoltzfus. Fair play for you guys who said live bet it. I think that's a good look. And Narco for taking the under 2.5 at minus 180-ish range. Yeah, I think that's really good.
Shout out to anybody that looked to bet Matos and Bellator. He just finished off Mr. CJ Hamilton. It looked like a body shot, and then followed up to some ground and pound. There's a good win from there. Warrior, do you have anything else to actually add to this fight, or are you echoing the same sentiments that we got?
I mean, in a way, but I'm going to give you kind of a different take. I think that was one of the biggest upsets in the last, I don't know how long, and that's weighing on everyone's mind. So it's, to play devil's advocate in a way, I think this is kind of a buy low spot for Vieira. When I watched Stoltzfus on tape, I saw a lot of pulling guard, a lot of leg lock attempts, a lot of open your guard from his back and try to triangle his opponent. And I just think that's bad news for a guy like Vieira. I know, as he said, he has a black belt himself, but too much confidence from your back is just going to open up more opportunities for Vieira. And I think round one is probably plus, I think round one plus 175 right now for Vieira. I think throw away the under 1.5, throw away the under 2.5. I think this is a buy low spot. Everyone's low on Vieira after what happened. He lost. Fluffy was plus. I don't even know what it was, but it was a crazy upset. Everyone has that on their mind. Again, what have you done for me lately? Dustin is not that guy. It's going to be a round one finish for Vieira, and you can get plus 175. So I like that.
He is not that guy indeed. All right, let's move on to this next fight that we got coming up. We got Mateusz Gamrot going up against Jeremy Stephens, and I believe I am the one kicking this one off for you guys once again. Very intriguing fight. Like all fight week, it seems like this is the one that's being talked about the most. A lot of people believe that the UFC veteran Stephens has some value here around that plus 170, plus 185 mark that he's at. And I kind of agree with them, but I still do believe that we'll see Gamrot succeed on getting the fight to the ground, getting enough takedowns getting the amount of takedowns that are required to win at least 2 rounds in this fight and take home a decision victory. I will say this, I do think that Jeremy Stephens has the advantage on the feet. Obviously better power, maybe better combinations. Obviously his leg kicks probably won't be a big factor in this fight given the stances that these guys fight in, and I believe that calf kick won't be nullified given the opposite stances here, but I still do think that we'll see big power come from Jeremy Stephens as long as this fight is in the striking realm. With that said, I love the way Gamrot closes distance with his straight down the middle, just to close the distance, then go down and snatch that single leg and convert that into a takedown. I love that. I think that he's going to be able to hit that on numerous occasions here against on Jeremy Stephens. My only concern is I don't know how much Gamrot's actually going to be able to control Stephens on the ground. I'm not super impressed with his ability to control guys on the ground. I think Stephens does a good job in terms of nullifying the damage and control time that his opponents are able to accrue on him. Even if they're landing 3, 4, 5 takedowns on him, he does a good job in terms of getting back to his feet. And then obviously once he gets back to the feet, he's throwing hell and high water at his opponents. Gamrot, 17-0 coming into the UFC, takes his first loss against Guram Kutateladze, and I feel like that fight has a good indicator of how this one could potentially go, especially with Gamrot completing takedowns in that fight, but seeing Guram get back to the feet, nullifying the damage that he's taking on the ground, and then dishing out the damage on the feet. Now, even though Gamrot outstruck him in that fight numbers-wise, we could definitely tell that Guram was landing the better strikes on the feet, and we can see that possibly happening here with Jeremy Stephens. I ultimately still do come out on the Gamrot side of things, thinking that he wins this fight by decision. Around plus 220 is not too bad of a line if that's the spot that you want to take him. I do think that Jeremy Stephens is still quite durable. I don't know if Gamrot has that knockout power to truly give Stephens issues on the feet, nor do I think he has the technical capabilities similar to what Calvin Kattar was able to present against Jeremy Stephens. I don't think he's going to bring that type of striking to this, and I don't think that he'll find that knockout punch on Jeremy Stephens. I think he just grounds his fight at least long enough or at least enough times in 2 out of 3 of these rounds to get that decision victory. But I'm not playing him at minus 200 here. There's just too many question marks, especially considering the fact that he just doesn't get enough control time. That's my biggest concern here. And as long as this fight is on the feet, I'm going to be sweating my ass off if I have a minus 200 ticket on Gamrot in this spot. I would rather feel much safer with that plus 220 via decision, because I just don't see him in one, submitting Jeremy Stephens, or two, finishing Jeremy Stephens. That combination that he landed on Scott Holtzman was as clean as you'll ever see a 1-2 down the pipe. That is probably one of the greatest 1-2 combinations I've seen to knock out a fighter. And Scott Holtzman ate every single inch of both of those punches and went to sleep. I'd be surprised if he lands the same effectiveness on Jeremy Stephens here. He'll probably land good enough just to kind of keep it serviceable and even enough on the feet for him to eventually find that takedown, which I think he'll find at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 takedowns in this fight to take home a decision victory. Z, do you see this fight going any differently? And do you think there's any value on Jeremy Stephens as a dog?
I was tempted on Jeremy, but when he was creeping up to like 233, like at that mark, I think you can take a shot. But again, I honestly do think Gamrot should be favored. But I don't know. This is one of those fights where I just have a hunch. I think Gamrot is a little bit overrated generally. He does have a good process to his game, so I get why people like him. But again, I just feel like he's being a little bit overrated. I was able to take advantage of that in his debut. And Jeremy Stephens, he has the most losses in UFC, but that's because he sticks around for so long, because he's so dangerous. He also has I think it's like 3rd or 4th most knockdowns in the UFC, something like that. So he's just always a very dangerous guy, right? Very veteran fighter, throws big. So that's the type of underdog who always kind of has a shot. And it's not really technical analysis, but I just have a hunch he's going to land. That's my take on this one here. I do have a hunch Jeremy's going to sleep Gamrot, but when you look at it, yeah, Gamrot's a very good fighter. Like I said, good striking, good grappling, good process, good minute winner, all this good stuff. So I understand why he's the favorite, but if Jeremy gets to plus 233, I think that money line is starting to look a little wide, and I'm just having a look here at his knockout. I mean, his knockout at plus 450, that might not be a bad shot,
I do like the fact that we're seeing Gamrot train down there at ATT, and you got to believe that's going to help him kind of round out his game. But we got to see it in play before we can truly say that they've made a difference in his game. Warrior, how are you feeling about this fight? Do you see any value on Lil Heathen?
I don't have too much to add as far as analysis, but I think you can play this, throw a unit on decision Gamrot, throw a unit on Jeremy Stephens KO, and I think you could probably come out on top either which way it happens. Just the work rate, the pace, and his versatility of Gamrot sort of scares me if I'm on the Stephens side. I mean, it's obvious why he's the favorite, but I'm not too confident here. Like I said, I think you can do Gamrot decision and Stephens KO, and you'll make it out on top.
I like it. Mike, do you have anything to add to this matchup, brother?
Pretty similar to them. Like I'm pretty high, a little opposite, I guess, of Z. I'm pretty high on Gamrot. Like, his work rate. The guy is just solid everywhere. Yeah, I guess he lost his last fight, but to me, he won. It was a split decision. I guess you could have went both ways. I thought he won that last fight. But I just see him grounding Stephens enough times, like you said, to take, 2 rounds off of him at minimum. And then you're turning a minus 225 into a plus 225 with this. And I think that's just like the path he's going to win. Like, I don't think he's stopping Stephens anyway. Like, Stephens very durable, very solid on the ground. He's going to get up. Like, when he gets taken down, I don't think he's going to be able to control him down there. And then he's dangerous on the feet. But I also think Gamrot has a pretty good chin. So, yeah, Stephens can crack. I'm not saying if he cracks him, he's probably going to put him out. But he does have a chin. So, yeah, I just see the value in Gamrot at plus 225 by decision. I think that's a good play.
I think the most important question for this matchup has been posed by our guy, Sex God, saying the real question is if Gamrot will move when he gets knocked out. That's the real question in this fight. All right. Let's move on to the co-main event here. We got Marion Reneau going up against Miesha Tate. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 140 for the returning Miesha Tate and plus 120-ish for the retiring Marion Reneau. Very interesting that we got completely different sides of the spectrum here. Somebody returning from retirement, somebody going into retirement. Z, I'm actually going to let you kick this one off. Personally, I don't want anything to do with this matchup considering all the circumstances surrounding it. But do you see any value in this fight at all? And ultimately, who do you think ends up winning?
I'd just like to address the guy who stole my screen name. And what are the odds on that prop for Gamrot not moving? after he gets knocked out. Give me a line on that. But no, I agree with you 100%. Reneau versus Tate. How do you bet this? Like, honestly, like Reneau is dangerous. Tate, if she's been improving and in the gym this whole time and she looks good physically, so it's reasonable to assume that she has had enough time off to develop a whole new skill set. So, but it's just such a blind situation that I don't want to back Miesha Tate coming in here. I was never really that high on her throughout her career. But I mean, Marion Reneau is like, you know, a very old, with all due respect, a very old fighter by UFC fighter standards. So could she come in here and get grinded up against the cage and ragdolled by Tate? I think it's realistic to assume that. Or if Tate comes back and gets, you know, shoots and gets guillotined and everyone's like, oh, she was coming off such a big layoff, she had retired. Like, I just have no desire to bet this fight one way or the other. Over, under, dog, favorite. I'm not interested at all.
I completely understand that. The weird part about this is the fact that Miesha Tate decided to hang it up at 29 years old. That's almost like prime time for MMA fighters. Not to mention she takes 5 years off, has 2 kids, and now comes back at 34 years old. It's just so difficult to really put a finger on what she's going to look like coming into the cage. Warrior, do you have any intel on this that we're not seeing? How do you feel about this fight all in all?
I believe I tweeted like 3 or 4 days ago, how could anyone bet Miesha Tate as a favorite in this spot?
Yeah,
this is like a real easy fight to break down if you're just looking on paper and wiki capping, like, oh, Reneau has 4 losses in a row. Tate was minus 260 versus Amanda Nunes. What could be so different here? 34 versus 44. But a lot of people are talking about how Miesha Tate looks good and on her IG, it looks good in camp. When has Miesha Tate ever looked bad?
Yeah.
Come on.
You're right.
She's a good-looking girl. That's what people are talking about. And this is just a weird fight. I know I said that you can't bet Tate here, but I'm not rushing to the window to bet Marion Reneau. Like, what the fuck? She's 44 years old. To her credit, I don't think she's looked bad in any of her losses, the last 4 losses. She was like, outside of that, I think she got clipped with a left hook versus Macy Chasson in that second round. Before that, though, and like the sequences after that in round 3, how that played out, you take away that left hook, and she probably wins that decision. That was such a big moment in round 2, and I just think I hope more money comes in on Tate, and I'll be on Reneau here at 44 years old, and I think she's going to get the job done here.
Yeah, Marion Reneau seems to be the fade just because she's like 40 plus years old in the last several fights. And I was one of the few people that was on Marion Reneau going into the Macy Chiasson fight, as I believe that there's a little bit of a value there. And I don't think anybody expected her to win at least one or that first round, which exactly is what she did that night. And then it seemed like after that, Macy Chiasson was like, fuck it, let's get into the clinch and let me start to overpower you. And then obviously, like Warrior stated, that left hook that she was able to land, I think ended up breaking Marion Reneau's nose as well. That definitely swayed that fight as well. Yeah, very, very close fight. Mike, how do you feel about this matchup between the returning Tate and the outgoing Marion Reneau?
Complete pass. Like, one thing is, like, one person is, you know, away from the ring for 5 years for God knows why. You know, she has kids, whatever. I don't know what the reasoning was, but she was, like you said, 29, you're in your prime, and you just leave for 5 years, right? The other person is stating in an interview, I can't wait to retire. She's 44. Like, how could you bet either side here? Like, I don't see it's so many red flags in this fight that there's red flags on both sides. So it's a complete pass for me.
See, go ahead.
But someone's gonna bet this fight and win. You know what I mean? So someone in hindsight will be going, "Oh, it was
me, Marion Reneau."
They'll be the Sharpies.
There's nothing sharp about betting this fight. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
there's nothing sharp. No matter what happens, there's nothing sharp about betting this fight, in my opinion.
I will say this, though, for the James Krause lovers, apparently Miesha Tate is the strongest play for this weekend. That's James Krause. But either way, in regards
he
to
hit Maya, he hit
Maya and Aldana, which were his strongest plays. Robbery. I will say this, though. Marion Reneau could make this a closer fight. Like, she could absolutely make this a scrappy, aggressive fight. I believe Miesha Tate needs to land takedowns here to have true success and actually even live up to that minus 140 mark that she's at. But I think that if this fight stays on the feet, Marion Reneau could make it very dirty. She has a decent Muay Thai and aggressive game. She can definitely put the pressure on Miesha Tate, push her back. She knows this is a retirement fight. Do you really think she wants to go off at an 0-5 clip before she ends up hanging up the gloves? No. to end off your career with a win over a girl like Miesha Tate, albeit her coming off of retirement, would be a big feather in the cap, even though she's 0-4 in her last four fights. So I think Reneau could make it a much closer fight than most people are expecting it to be. And even though she's 44 years old, this is women's MMA at the end of the day, folks. She can make this a close fight. If she stops a couple takedowns or whatever the hell it is and keeps this fight on the feet, she could absolutely go out there and outstrike Miesha Tate. But I still go back to the thing that I always usually lean on the grappler here. And I think that Miesha Tate's grappling credentials, her grappling prowess is enough to go out there and get this fight to the ground time and time again and grind out Reneau. But I'm not going out there and putting my hard-earned money on a fight like this where, if Tate, first time live action in over 5 years, if she can't complete the takedown, she's fucked. In my opinion, she's fucked if she can't land at least 2 takedowns in this fight. I think she's going to get outworked by Marion Reneau. Go ahead, Narco.
And to be honest, I know you're saying she's a good grappler, but she did not look good against Raquel Pennington.
That's another thing.
I mean, she was getting out grappled in that fight. And
she's an overrated grappler. Watch that Nunes rear naked choke back. It feels like she fake went to sleep in that fight. Watch that back. It was a rear naked choke finish for Nunes, right? Mm-hmm. And I watched that sequence a few times, and I was just like, she's not even under the chin, and it played out to where she kind of acted like she was out, and I don't even think there was a tap. It was just weird. I think, to Narco's point, Tate's not really a good grappler. Like, her wrestling, she shoots a shit ton of takedowns, but is it any good? I think her optics on the feet are horrible. I know I said when she gets hit, her optics are horrible, but who really likes to get hit? But it's obvious with Tate. Anytime you land a big punch on her, she backs up. Her face is like, it's like Alexis Davis. You hit Alexis Davis with one shot, her face turns red, and she swells up easily. I think Miesha Tate's exactly like that. 5 years off, you can't teach someone how to take a punch. So if Tate isn't getting these takedowns, watch out. Reneau is by far the better striker in my opinion. So watch out.
And she's dangerous on the ground. I mean, she's not some slouch on the ground either.
Yeah. She has good jiu-jitsu accolades.
She throws up a lot of subs from the bottom. So
you guys are talking yourselves into betting Marion Reneau here. I see what's happening. But to your point, Locke, about Reneau could make this fight look a lot closer. I mean, the line's not that crazy. It's only
I know.
So to Warriors' point, I would say wait for some Miesha Tate money to come in. The IG fans are gonna better, and then you take her when she's like, I don't know, plus 180 maybe.
She looks good. She always does on IG. What the fuck?
I know. When has she not?
Come on.
When she's fucking pregnant.
Come on.
I will say this: Reneau inside the distance, plus 470. Just throwing that out there. Just saying. But ultimately, in terms of a pick, I'm going to be going with the Tate side of things here. I do think she picks up the decision victory in this spot, but I am not touching that fight with my money at all. Z, I believe you are next up on this, or did we already get to you?
Sure, I'll go for Islam Makhachev and
No. Did you talk about Tate and Reneau?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just completely out of my mind. Then I believe we got.
You don't remember that he picked Marion Reneau?
I
finish in round one?
I don't actually. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Obviously, it's the main event. Do want to remind you guys, as always, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe. Best way to show your support for the show, and obviously show some support for the guys that are on the panel tonight. Their links to their Twitter pages is in the description below. So go on over there, click on those links, and hit that follow. Trust me, you're going to thank me for it later. All right, let's get to the main event slot here. We got Islam Makhachev going up against Thiago Moises. Very intriguing matchup between lightweights here. It seems like nobody wants to fight Makhachev. Thiago Moises is over here trying to get some more respect and accepts the fight, especially in a main event slot here. It should be very big for whoever comes out on the winning end. And I believe we have my guy Warrior starting off this fight for us. So how do you see this fight going down between the heavily chalked Islam Makhachev and the plus 400-ish underdog Thiago Moises?
I'm not making any bold statements here, but the best 155er in the world can do whatever he wants to Thiago Moises. Play round 4, Islam Makhachev. He's the best 155er in the world. He's going to win in round 4 with 3 minutes and 17 seconds on the clock.
Jesus. Mystic Warrior over there calling the minutes and seconds of this fight. I love it. Mike, how are you feeling about this matchup between the Dagestani fucking Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moises?
So I have a little bit of a different take. Like, I'm really impressed with Islam. Like Warrior said, the dude is top 5 right now. I think he's a top 5 guy. But the one thing, like, to me that I saw from Moises is he has a good get-up game. He does not stay down on the ground. I think he's gonna make Islam work. Like I know. Look, Benny is a good grappler. Benny's a good wrestler. Like he has top pressure. Like, you know, Moises kept getting up over and over again in that fight. Yeah, he got dominated. I agree. The one thing I also saw, like, kind of me personally, I took Makhachev by decision. That's where I see his path. I don't see him stopping Moises. I took him at -115, but Makhachev has never been past the third round. He's only been 3 rounds. Moises has been 5 rounds 3 different times. He's been there. So we really don't know what. I know Makhachev probably has good crider, but we don't know. We've never seen him into the 4th and 5th rounds. The other thing that I saw is in that Arman fight, like Makhachev really, really slowed down. I know it was a high-paced fight. There was a lot of grappling, but he really slowed down in that 3rd round. He was tired. And I think if Moises can make him work a lot and get this fight to the 4th and 5th rounds, he might have that slim opportunity to maybe stop Makhachev late, just because we don't. It's an unknown as to what his cardio will look like in the 4th and 5th round when he's constantly going for takedowns. You know, Moises is fighting him off. Yeah, he might be going down. I'm not saying he's not going to go down, but he doesn't stay down there. And then you know, as this goes on later and later, you know, he might tire out. Like I saw him tiring out against Arman, who took the fight on short notice. So, like, I know Arman's a great, you know, wrestler, grappler, but Moises is not a slouch on the ground either. So, like, yes, I have Makhachev at -115, you know, by decision, but I also took a small poke at +4,500 and +5,000 for Moises in round 4 and 5, just because I haven't seen Makhachev there, but I have seen Moises there 3 different times.
I don't mind that angle at all. And I will give you a little bit of credence once again to my breakdown as well. But it looks like Fortune just made Matt Mitrione tap to strikes. Not a good look for Matt Mitrione at this point in his career. So I whiff on my dog and then I play for the Bellator. I had the over 1.5 there. I was expecting Fortune to just kind of lay and pray a little bit more rather than just go out there and get that kill. But good work by Fortune to get the victory there. But in terms of this matchup between Makhachev and Moises, I think the one thing that we've seen from Moises, especially if you go back and watch his regional tape, he does have good technical striking. Like he has, you know, he has good head kicks, obviously great striking, good combinations. But the issue that he had in the regional scene was that he didn't really force anything. He almost seemed to allow his opponent to kind of dictate the pace and the pressure of the fight. And whereas he was just always on his back foot and would throw his combinations every now and then, it just wasn't effective enough. We've seen him kind of, you know, grow in a sense. Like, and not to mention back when he was in RFA going 5 rounds, he was only 21 years old. Now he's 26 years old, has a wealth of experience under his belt, going up against the stiffest test of his career, bar none. But I think his striking might even be a tad bit better than Islam in this fight, where if he's able to go out there and be the person that's actually going first and putting the pressure on Islam, he could have some success with his striking. And we've obviously seen the only time Islam has lost a fight was that one time he got knocked out by Adriano Martins. I'm not saying that 100% Moises is going to go out there and replicate that type of performance, but that's something that we definitely have to take into consideration here. I believe most people think that the only way Moises wins this fight is if he throws up a submission off of his back or it gets a reversal and then ends up on top or something like that. I personally think he's going to have the most amount of success he'll have is on the feet. I do believe Makhachev is a decent striker, but I think that Moises could potentially give him some issues there, depending on how long the fight actually stays on the feet. We saw how good he obviously looks against a guy like Alexander Hernandez, where he's able to kind of dictate the pace and the pressure of the fight. Not saying he's going to be able to do that here against Makhachev, but if this fight is in the striking realm more than it is in the grappling realm, I'd be a little bit, I'd be sweating that Makhachev ticket a little bit more, whether it's a decision inside the distance or even if you have him as a parlay piece. I do think, though, that we've seen Makhachev make the appropriate changes and the improvements that he's needed in his striking defense to kind of nullify any type of strikes and power coming back his way. I think he'll almost counter any time that Thiago Moises tries to commit to a combination of any sort. I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of change levels or even feint changing levels to kind of keep Thiago Moises on the tip of his toes. I do think he'll complete takedowns. That's without a doubt. And I think he will be successful in grinding him out. I just think that to Mike's point in terms of seeing Moises continues to get back to his feet, I don't think he's ever faced somebody like Makhachev in terms of having that type of heavy pressure from on top, which I think is going to truly give him the issue. The one thing I will agree with Mike with, though, is Moises will make him work. And we've never seen Makhachev go that round 4 and round 5, and that could potentially be an issue for him. On the flip side, though, we have seen Moises go 5 rounds, but we've never seen him deal with this type of pace and pressure either. So both guys are question marks the later that this fight goes. But I still end up on the Makhachev side here. Chalk or not, the guy is a crazy talent. His wrestling is unparalleled. His entries on his takedowns, his completion of takedowns, his top pressure is just so unrelenting that I find it hard that anybody's going to be able to combat that effectively, even if you're a high-level jiu-jitsu player like Thiago Moises is. So just to quickly recap, I think Moises will have some success on the feet. I don't think it's going to be enough to actually get him the win here or the knockout, but I do think that's the best path to victory for him is on the feet and potentially finding a knockout rather than finding a submission off of his back, which I think is going to be near impossible against a guy who has that top pressure like Islam Makhachev. The side that I'm going with is Makhachev and Makhachev by decision, plus 105, plus 120-ish. You can find at certain spots. I think that's the spot to go with on this card or this fight. I think Moises is going to be tough to put away. It all just depends on how these guys' cardios look like going into rounds 4 and round 5, dealing with the pressure and the pace and the activity that they're going to be giving to each other. So I'm hoping that Makhachev's cardio is good enough to go out there and put on that 5-round pace and take home that decision victory. That's how I like this fight going down. Z, how do you see this matchup going down between the Khabib prodigy Islam Makhachev and according to Warrior, the next lightweight champion, and Thiago Moises?
Yeah, this is just another level, brother. This is Faza's plan, you know. This is I think Islam boxes him up. I think your take on that Moises' best chances on the feet, I think that should tell you all you need to know, because I don't think he has much of a chance on the feet, if I'm being honest. I think Islam is just a complete fighter, great athlete, really good southpaw game, very, very composed, very risk averse, you know, and I think he can take down Thiago at will and just hold him down. And I think this is going to be one-way traffic. So honestly, I agree with Warrior's take that he's going to finish this in the 4th round. That was exactly my prediction as well. I don't know if you're watching my channel, Warrior, but yeah, I understand that like Moises has been 5 rounds before, and we haven't seen Islam go 5 rounds. And fair play to Narco for saying, you know, he was tired in the Arman fight. But Arman Sarukian's a tough wrestler, man. Like he's hard. He's very, very hard to take down, to control. He's very strong himself. He's gone on to be undefeated since fighting Islam. I think he's another guy who's right in the mix, you know. Whereas Thiago, we've seen him controlled for large portions of fights. You know, Beneil Dariush took him down at will, held him down at will. So if this is one-way traffic where Islam is landing on the feet and taking him down and raining ground and pound down or just dominating him, I think he eventually wears out Thiago Moises. I really like Thiago. You know, I used him to fade Alexander Hernandez last time out. I think he has a serious skill set, but I do think Islam is just a step ahead, especially in the striking. Like Thiago is doing a lot of things really well. He's developing, he's well schooled and well drilled, but I think Islam not only has a great stylistic game for him, but is on another level striking wise. So yeah, I definitely agree with Islam being the favorite. Of course, minus 700 for a fist fight is always going to be a little wide, but I think taking Islam inside the distance at plus 150 is the way I would play this fight, just because he has 25 minutes to get Thiago out of there. And I see this being one-way traffic the whole fight. So yeah, that's my take on it. But honestly, if you want to take Islam by decision instead, I see that angle as well. It could play out that way. It's just from my perspective, I think he's going to get a finish down the stretch.
All right. So pretty much everybody on Islam Makhachev here. Slight differences in terms of how we think it's going to get it done, but ultimately that minus 600 should end up cashing. All right. The last segment that I like to do of the show here is the lock of the night play, or everybody's most confident play of the card. I'll start off with this. The spot that I like the most, first fight of the night, under 1.5, and Nascimento versus Baudot. I'm expecting Nascimento to get that takedown with relative ease, and then shortly thereafter find an arm triangle choke. Baudot does not deserve to be inside the UFC. He is not UFC level. Could potentially land a Hail Mary knockout as Nascimento closes the distance here. I just don't see it happening. I think it's Nascimento easily getting the takedown here, not much resistance, and then eventually finding that choke. I'd say sub 3 minutes. 3 minutes, he's going to find that submission on Baudot here. And yeah, under 1.5, minus 145. That's my lock of the night play for this weekend. Z, what's your most confident bet on the card?
Yeah, I mean, The biggest bet of me for the weekend is that fight doesn't go the distance. So I would say that, but I know you want at least minus 300, I think you said.
Minus 250.
Minus 250. Okay. So I do see you can bet fight doesn't start round 3 in that fight. That would be how I do. But honestly, I mean, the under 1.5 is probably a good look as well. So that's the read that I'm just the most solid on. So it could be Nascimento inside. It could be the under 1.5. It could be that doesn't go. Any type of combination or selection out of there, I think, is pretty solid.
I like it. Warrior, what do you like the most on this upcoming card?
You guys are putting me in a tough spot here. I was going to go with the same goddamn fight, but if you guys are taking that one as well, I'll go ahead and go something different. Under 1.5 for Vieira Stoltzfus. You can get that at a plus number. I think this is Vieira round 1 submission. And I'm going to give you another one, too. I don't think the main event has started for Bellator up next. No. Go ahead and take the under 4.5 in that one as well. I think Velasquez is going to finish her via submission in that fight.
Shit. There you guys go. Some live MMA betting action for you guys before the Bellator main event kicks off. Mike, what's your lock of the night play for UFC Vegas 31?
So mine was going to be that under 2.5 in the Stoltzfus fight. But you know what? I love Lemos inside the distance. Like plus 115, plus money. Like, I really love that play. So at plus money, probability is so high for it to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right. Lemos in round 1 at plus 300 is the lock of the night. Come on.
There you go.
Round 1 plus 500.
Pretty much what we've been able to say this entire podcast is tomorrow night there's going to be some violence. There's definitely going to be some violence in plenty of the fights. So if you're taking the unders in most of those fights, more often than not, I think you'll end up cashing. All right, I'll spin around the horn one last time to allow these guys to plug whatever they want to plug. So Z, first and foremost, let the peeps know where they can find you and anything that you want to plug as well.
Yeah, much respect, Locke. And I'll come on here anytime I can. Follow me on Twitter at ZZMMA, YouTube ZZMMA. I have zzmma.ca if you want to check out what I got going on. Tracked on betmma.tips as we all are. So, under Rockstar Z or ZZMMA as well.
And a bonehead move from Z here, not even plugging Fair Play Fridays that he likes to do every
YouTube. Hey, it's all the same.
There you go. Make sure you guys catch Z's podcast every Friday evening where he brings down 3 guests as well and tries to go through the card. Warrior, what do you want to plug for the fans here, brother?
You see it on the screen. Follow me on Twitter at WarriorBetMMA. And I recommend you do not watch my easiest money of the weekend videos because holy shit, we're off to a terrible start. I'm out.
I love it. Make sure you guys go follow a Warrior Bet. He is a very, very sharp dude. I promise you guys will enjoy his takes. Mike, what do you got to plug, my brother?
Just follow me on Twitter at NarcoCop. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with these two, you 3 guys. I mean, all you very sharpies. That's it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's pretty much the episode here. Again, the links to the Twitter pages are in the description below. So make sure you guys go give them some love. The fights kick off 7 p.m. Eastern. I believe this is the start time tomorrow. So make sure you guys catch those fights. And we'll be back next week as well for UFC Vegas 32. I'll announce the cast for that as soon as I confirm it. I have 2 more guys that I'm waiting to hear back from. But as soon as I get the information, I will make sure to pass that along to you guys. Lastly, 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Fight Day live chat. That's where the stream is pretty much all for you guys. Comments, questions, concerns, all of that stuff. I'll be fielding all of that for you guys 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Good luck on your bets and War Nascimento round 1.
Well, brother.